Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So I just want to say before we go in, Joanne and I are really looking forward to this opportunity. I want to thank our good friend, Mayor Cownie, who I've worked with for many years now. And mental health, of course, is Charlene's issue that she focuses on. We're really here to hear firsthand what the reality is in terms of providing mental health and all health care to the people of the state. We know there's been huge mistakes made by the Republican governor, this governor, and the previous governor that have really undermined the ability of people to get health care and get mental health care. We want to understand what the day-to-day reality is, so we're looking forward to this meeting. But wanted to see if there's any questions up front.
How do you distinguish yourself from such a large crowd of candidates?
Look, it's to me about talking about working people and then showing that we can make a change in working people's lives, and we've done that in New York. I think the current reality for working people in America is really insecure, difficult, overwhelming for a lot of people. They just don't live the lives they deserve to live. And in New York, we've shown that the government can do something very different to be on the side of working people. We've done pre-K for all, we've done paid sick days, we're doing guaranteed health care, including mental health care. And these changes are happening now for everyday people. So my view is that I'm offering solutions that are actually happening and the ability to create those solutions for people. And I think that's a real differentiator.
You
Mayor,
came in saying we will win. Does that mean you expect to win Iowa?
I expect to win Iowa. I expect to win the whole thing. I wouldn't be running if I wasn't focused on victory. I've run in 10 elections. I've won them all, and pretty much every time I started as an underdog. There's nothing unusual about that. Shirley and I have been down this road quite a bit, many times, and I always say it's not where you start, it's where you end. And I think that the issues facing working people in Iowa are very much like the ones in New York. People are looking for actual solutions. Iowans, in my experience, are the best betters around when it comes to looking at candidates, asking tough questions, really figuring out who someone is. And I think what people in this state are going to care about is, can you prove that you can get the job done? And for me, it's not policy papers. It's not something abstract. It's real work we've done for real people. I represent 8.6 million people, and we've been able to create a lot of change in their lives. And I think Iowa voters are going to see that as a very important factor.
Mayor, on your first trip to Iowa, why did you decide to do these individual meetings instead of a traditional campaign-type rally where you're laying out those issues that you think Iowans should care about?
This is just the beginning of a campaign, literally the first full day out on the road. There's a lot of time to lay out the policies and ideas, but I wanted to start with the issues that I think are crucially important. This morning, spending time with Governor Vilsack talking about biofuels and the future of the rural economy. We spent some time with a really powerful group of family farmers talking about the future of family farms and how we can support family farms and make agriculture work for working people. This issue, healthcare, mental health care, is going to be central to our campaign. It's been central to what we're doing in New York. We're doing it piece by piece. But what I'm really focusing on today is listening to Iowans. It's not me, it's listening to the people. And that's going to help us to make sure that we're putting forward ideas and proposals that really matter to the people of Iowa and people of this country.
How do you think you'd match up with Donald Trump?
Well, here's the deal. I'm a New Yorker. I understand Donald Trump. I've been watching this guy for decades. I know every trick in his book. I know how to deal with him. Yet the only way to deal with this guy is to be tough, go right back at him. And I think too often Democrats have been, a little reticent to take him on toe-to-toe. And, I called him con man in my opening interview, and I feel he is a con man. I feel he told working people that he was going to be on their side, and he's literally done everything he possibly could do to help the wealthy and the corporations. So I call him Con Don. And I'm saying that phrase to make a point that I'm not falling for what this guy is about. I know how to fight what he does. I know how to challenge him. He then immediately had to respond to that. He put out a tweet, then he put out a video, and it proves that, I struck a nerve. And you got to keep a bully off balance, and you don't do that by being passive or being timid. I'm going to be very tough with him. And that New York culture that I come out of, it's taught me everything I need to know about how to beat Donald Trump.
Last call, guys.
Mayor Blasio, shouldn't you go above that rhetoric, though? Shouldn't you not
go down to that
Oh,
level
I
of
think
getting calling?
being blunt and taking them on is the right way to do things. This is about the future of our country. It's about the future of our planet. When you think about global warming, it's not time to be Mr. Nice Guy. It's time to be tough. And he deserves what he gets. He is a con man. He should be called a con man. So, no, I think this is the way to get the point across.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
I need one of these because
Slow down, we need a couple shots back here.
Happy that the mayor and first lady are here and to talk and to listen to what's going on and out here in the heartland in Iowa and specifically in Des Moines around issues of mental health. We had a great conversation about actual patients, about ideas, about possibilities, and hopefully to help people. I again want to turn it over, but I want to thank them for being here and being, quite frankly, such good listeners to hear what's going on the ground in Iowa, in the city of Des Moines. So, if Mayor, if you don't mind, I'm going to defer to the First Lady.
You've chosen wisely.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can, no, just stand back from it. There you go. There you
Is
go.
that good?
Want to lower that?
All right.
It's like it's height discrimination. There you go.
Yeah, it's a lot better for me. So I am always moved by the people, by the providers of mental health services, and I was again today. The need is so great. There are so many people who need services, especially those who are isolated from the more urban centers. And I can't tell you how urgent the situation is in this country that we be able to provide our families and our communities with what they need in terms of care. We know how to do this work. We should be doing it, but we're not. And this is a very good example of a place that is doing incredible work, really incredible work. But it's not enough. There are workforce issues all over the state, and there are service issues that we must address.
Thank you very much, Charlene. And I want to thank Mayor Cownie, who's been just a great friend and colleague for years now, and just thank him for everything he does for the people of Des Moines, but also one of the leaders among mayors in this country on fighting global warming and on so many other important issues, fostering global peace. He's been a real voice of conscience for the mayors of this country, so thank you, Frank, for that. To what Charlene just said, here, you can come over on this side, I don't want to block it. To what Charlene just said, I want to add, it's been today a chance to hear from Iowans about the struggles they face and the challenges they face. And earlier today, talking to family farmers about how tough it is right now to keep their farms going and how tough it is to see the next generation unable to continue that farming tradition because of corporate agriculture, because it's so hard for people to make ends meet. And just recognizing how everyday Iowans know in so many ways the federal government is not there for them when they need them. And Charlene's point about what's happening with mental health in this state, and this has been something that's been talked about now for years. This is a state where a lot of people have mental health needs that are going unmet, unaddressed, and the decisions of the state government have actually made it worse. It's harder and harder for Iowans to access mental health care services. That's particularly true for rural Iowans, but it's, as you heard from Frank, it's tough here in Des Moines as well. These are examples of issues that working people face. and they see too often that no matter how hard they work, they can't get the help and support they deserve. And I also want to say the good people here who are providing these mental health services, it's literally gotten tougher each year for them. And the mistakes of the state government have really added to it. But imagine all the stigma that Charlene's done so much to try and address in New York, that's always there. And the challenges that families face, and remember, it's about 1 in 5 families in this country. That's right, 1 in 5 adults, thank you, in this country. But then on top of it, to see it get harder to get people the help they need. That's what we heard from these providers, that their work is getting harder each year. And that's unfair to the people of Iowa. They deserve more support. So Charlene and I are certainly going to be devoted to spreading the message of what's happening here in Iowa, it's happening all over the country, and fighting for a federal government that actually addresses the mental health issue and is on the side of working people. So with that, open up to your questions.
Where are you guys getting the funding to finance this trip? Is it coming from the federal fairness pact, the state
Have our
pact?
folks give you all those details about how the campaign is organized.
So virtually every other, if not every other, Democratic candidate for president has announced how much money they raised in the first 24 hours. And I did ask your campaign for that information, and they said they're not giving it out. They're waiting until the next filing period. Why not say?
We're going to talk about everything at the filing. That's just the best way to handle it.
Is that because should people interpret that to mean that you haven't done well
talk about everything
fundraising?
at the filing.
Why did you film the video at Gracie, and why not get written permission from COIB?
Again, everything's been done legally, and we'll have the legal team speak to you. Does
Why
anyone
not
want to talk
provide
about
a
the
copy of a
issues
legal
facing the
opinion
people of
okaying
Iowa?
the use
Talk
of
about
the
it.
mention?
Do you think all these mental health problems will be solved by universal health care?
I think it's the single best step we can take to address both the physical crisis and the physical health crisis and the mental health crisis is a universal health care system.
That includes mental health. There is no health care if you don't include mental health services.
That's been a big talking point for people over the years of universal health care. You know, it may, scale-wise, it may work someplace like New York, but can that work here in Iowa? Can it work in some of the rural, smaller communities?
Well, I'm going to offer my view on the reality today and then where we need to go. And Frank may have some strong views on this too. I know Charlene does. Right now, when you think about the costs, we were talking about with the providers here, what are the costs when mental health services are not provided? So people end up in the emergency room a lot. People end up in many cases with physical health or mental health problems hospitalized who wouldn't have had to if they'd gotten help on the front end. Some people end up homeless. Some people end up in jail. There's a lot of costs that we are paying for right now because healthcare is not being provided when people need it. So in New York, we're providing universal healthcare now. We're saying that whoever you are, if you don't have insurance, you can come to our public health system. We're going to give you a primary care doctor that's assigned to you. You're going to have access to health care when you need it, not when it's too late, when you need it. And we believe that's the right thing to do morally, but we also believe that we're going to find over time that in many ways pays for itself because we're not spending all that money in such a horrible way when the problems just get worse and worse and worse. In terms of a vision for this country, absolutely a universal health care vision is needed. And I would argue that that's going to be helpful with both physical health and mental health, but because of the stigma associated with mental health, it's probably even going to do more on the mental health side if we take all the confusion out of the system, because right now, you know, millions upon millions of Americans uninsured, but on top of that, just the difficulty of navigating the healthcare system, finding the care you need, dealing with the deductibles, the out-of-pocket expenses, the co-pays, the premiums. This system right now, it's not a system based on getting people to care. In many ways, it's a system that discourages people from getting care. And that's why so many American families are struggling to be healthy. And that's why also, God forbid, a more serious problem comes along, it ends up bankrupting a lot of families. So there's no question in my mind, a universal health system is the way to go. And I hope what we're doing in New York will provide a good example, and a lot of it can be done, you know, with some of the things we have right now. Please.
Hi, Ed Fallon. I'm a talk show host, blogger, recovering politician, and Iowa caucus voter.
Recovering politician.
Yeah, and again, thank you for your leadership on the building ordinance in New York.
Thank you.
And for your rejection of the notion that a pipeline from New Jersey to Queens is a good idea. Thank you for that. So clearly you get that climate change is a crisis. Thank you. Now, will you make it your top priority? Because it is a crisis, not an issue. Will you make it your top priority?
It's the existential threat. So I would say it's a priority unlike any other because we deal with, obviously, the healthcare issues, we deal with education, we deal with so many other issues, but nothing compares to survival. Which is why we have put the Green New Deal into effect in New York City. For us, it is not just a policy position, it is an idea that's now happening in New York. That building mandate law is the toughest for any big city in the world. And it says to building owners, you have to cut your emissions or you will pay very, very serious penalties. But that's only one thing we're doing. We're creating an all-electric car fleet for our New York City public vehicles. We're putting public charging stations up for electric cars all over our city. We're going to be getting all of the electricity for our city's needs from renewable sources in the next 5 years. And you're right, we're saying no to pipelines that keep us hooked on fossil fuels when in fact it's a matter of survival to get away from fossil fuels. So there's no greater priority for sure.
Mayor,
Dave,
can you-
go ahead, Dave.
Mayor, Vice President Biden said that the 1994 crime bill didn't generate mass incarceration. Do you think that's an accurate statement? How would you characterize the effect of it?
It was certainly one of the contributors to mass incarceration. There's no question. Look, I think it would be really healthy if everyone who was involved would just come forward and say it was a mistake, and that we ended up with a situation where thousands upon thousands of people paid in a way they never should have. Families got torn apart. It's something we are still trying to recover from. I mean, in New York City, I can tell you there's tens of thousands of people suffering from the mistake of mass incarceration. Now, I always say mass incarceration didn't begin in New York City, but it's going to end in New York City. We have a jail population now that's over 30% lower than it was when I came into office. We're going to close Rikers Island once and for all. And we are doing the things to end mass incarceration by ending recidivism. We're giving everyone who is a jail inmate 5 days a week of education and training, a 90-day transitional job when they come out of jail so they can get back on their feet and never have to go back to jail again. And we're doing a lot to stop incarceration to begin with the most essential way, which is to have fewer arrests. The NYPD, I think, is the finest police force in the world. Had 150,000 fewer arrests in 2018 than 5 years earlier, and crime went down, Dave. And this is a story that needs to be heard, I think, everywhere. Finest police force in the nation. 150,000 fewer arrests and crime went down. It proves that the era of mass incarceration was a mistake on so many levels.
Mayor, were taxpayer funds used for any part of this trip? I need to ask the staff, but
Sure.
I haven't gotten an answer yet.
Again,
I just wanted to clear up that one point.
We're doing everything according to the law, and all the questions about process and details will get the legal team and the campaign team to answer for you.
We've been asking those questions for a day and we haven't gotten those answers.
That's fine. Just how are you able to be out on the campaign trail right now and run the biggest city in the country?
Because it's the 6th year of my mayoralty. We have put a whole host of plans in place. You just heard about some of them, the guaranteed healthcare plan, the building mandates to stop the emissions that are creating global warming, our efforts to create a safer city and reduce mass incarceration. That's all happening every single day in New York City. These are plans that have been developed over 6 years, and are deep-seated. We have a very, very strong team, and I'm in touch with them throughout the day, every day. This is not the first time I've traveled, I assure you. And even overseas, I stay in constant touch with my team and make sure everything's moving forward. And I'm a chief executive. I'm a chief executive of something very, very big. I have a $92 billion operating budget. I have 380,000 employees. I have to make sure that that is moving forward every day, regardless of where I am. That's what chief executive does. And by the way, that's what the President of the United States does.
Mayor,
Is
that's
the
an
state or federal
elections
PAC?
question. The executive director, Mike Ryan, testified before the city council today, and it sounded like they once again are not going to take you up on your offer for money.
The 100 poll sites?
Yes, yes.
That's unbelievable to me. I don't understand it. Again, guys, everyone here has done a great job reporting on this issue. I want to thank you for it. But I haven't seen anything like it. When I offered them $20 million to make just basic reforms and basic improvements, you would have thought anybody would say yes to that. It's still astounding to me that they didn't do that. But this one's even easier. We said, here's $75 million. All we're asking is you do 100 or more early voting poll sites. Then they said they were having trouble finding a list, so we gave them a list of 200 sites. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. And I don't even understand anymore what this game is at the Board of Elections. It's the law in New York State that you have to have early voting. And the law was, very cursory when it came to the number of sites that was mandated. But how on earth are you going to have places like Brooklyn and Queens have a handful of sites and expect that to be real early voting? So I think people are going to get outraged. I think people are going to demand it. And we should all be putting pressure on the Board of Elections and on everyone in Albany to change the reality of the Board of Elections, because this just doesn't work.
Did the state or the federal PAC pay for any portion
Guys,
of this?
I'm going to make sure you get all those answers. But
Mayor, you're
Mr.
also
McRae to
running
talk
for
about-
Commander-in-Chief.
Can I just ask Mr. McRae to talk about, the mayor has repeatedly said this is a family decision.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what went into, finally making this decision? And do you foresee your children being involved in this campaign as they were?
This is very much a family decision. We had many conversations. I really can't divulge the conversations themselves. Tell you what we talked about is very personal, of course. Also, our children, I can't even call them children anymore, they're young adults, very much have their own lives, and I can't speak for them anymore.
But I would say to level set,
Yes,
I say both of them right now are focused on their own lives.
Dante's going to graduate
Dante's graduating on Monday, and he's going to go.
They make their own plans.
So I think the best way to think about it is there's not a plan on either of their part to be involved in this campaign in the near term. That may change over time, but we really want to respect, that they are going on with their lives. They've got a lot they're focused on, and you'll just have to make do with little old us.
It looks like a new blazer and new shoes. Is this part of a larger wardrobe upgrade?
Yeah, or did you get a makeover?
If anyone has ever needed a makeover, it's me. My hard-working staff did have a few suggestions about. They suggested it was the 21st century and there were some new fashion trends I should be aware of. But I don't think we could possibly say all the way to makeover. It's an attempt.
Twitter says makeover, I think.
Is there one staffer who led the charge?
I'm not going
Perhaps
to go
Wiley
into national security secrets, but I would say that makeover is beyond the reach of any human being in my case, but they have at least reformed the situation. They've made a step in the right direction. Yes, sir.
Mayor, you're also running to be the Commander-in-Chief.
Yes, sir.
And we've been at war for a long, long time. And a lot of that warfare people associate with our alliance with Israel. And I wonder how you're going to deal with the warfare and that alliance.
Well, I don't make that association, first of all. I respect the question, but I would say this. As Commander-in-Chief, you have to make a very sober decision about committing American military forces. And remember, I have a very personal perspective on this because my dad served in the Army in World War II and very tragically came back from the Battle of Okinawa having lost half his leg, and that caused physical pain throughout the rest of his life, but also huge mental health challenges that led to alcoholism and a lot of other very, very painful realities. And someone said to me a long time ago, the war is not limited to the soldier. The war comes home to the whole family. And Charlene's dad served in World War II as well, and this is something we see very, very personally. So any decision about going to war has to be taken with our soldiers in mind and their families in mind. And clearly, one of the things we've not seen is the role of Congress being what it should have been. Ever since Vietnam, ever since the passage of the War Powers Act, and I'm someone who saw the Vietnam War also from a family perspective. My oldest brother was draft age, and we all felt very, very fearful that he would end up in a war that we knew was an unjust war.
Is this the reporter?
Yeah, former reporter. He's retired now.
Yeah.
Yes. So I say that to say the War Powers Act was passed for a reason, but Congress has not lived up to that until very, very recently in the case of the Yemen conflict, and I'm glad they finally did. But going forward, a responsible president should want the Congress to authorize military action. Now, we all agree there's certain situations where there's an emergency and something has to be acted on very quickly, but we have got to learn the lessons of our history and return to a real reverence for the War Powers Act and for the role of Congress. So that's my broad view of things. But to the other part of the question, I'm a strong supporter of the state of Israel. I believe Israel's security is crucial for so many reasons, including the history that led to the creation of the state of Israel. But I think there's a lot more that could be done to bring peace to the Middle East. I'm a believer in a two-state solution. I believe that Israelis and Palestinians are both suffering with the current status quo, and the two-state solution is still the best way to overcome that conflict. And I think the United States has to lead on that, because the current Israeli government surely isn't.
Man, do you have any sense if you will make that first debate yet? And how important is it for you to be in that first debate?
So at some point, my team will tell me if the DNC has spoken. You'll let me know. Okay, so we have a third poll that we think is a qualifying poll from Reuters that puts me at the qualifying level. But remember, even if you get those three polls, there's still a comparative dynamic with the candidates that has to ensue. So I'm not setting the expectation that I'll be in it. I certainly would like to be in it, but I'm not assuming that right now. In terms of importance, I think it's one of a number of factors. Now, I always try to stay in the big picture, but I will say one thing as a former campaigning manager, that no one should ever overrate a single factor in an election. Elections are made up of so many different elements. And by the way, elections that will happen in February are not determined in June, I assure you. So, love to be in it. But if we don't end up in it, we're going to find lots of other ways to get our message out. Okay, we got to go to our next tip. Okay, last one.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious. I know that the First Lady has to go back to the city for the mental health weekend.
Yes.
Obviously, black voters are very important in South Carolina, so I was wondering if, there was some sort of thought maybe she should be with you in South Carolina for your first run through there, or?
Well, I'll start if you have a further comment. The bottom line is what Charlene does with her public service has affected people of every background. Thrive Initiative is reaching tens of thousands of New Yorkers, but it's also been seen all over the country as a real important step forward for addressing mental health issues. And we're here in Iowa. Charlene's visited Iowa before on the question of mental health. I think her schedule allowing, you'll see her in every state. She was very happy to be in front of her grandpa's house in Claremont, New Hampshire, and I'm certain she'll want to go back there again. So you're going to see.
And I've been to South Carolina already.
Been to South Carolina.
I will be back there.
You'll see her already all over. But I would also say to you that I think the notion, and we were proof of it in 2013, this notion of people vote solely for demographic reasons. I've never believed that. We in 2013 in that primary, as you know, there was an African American candidate, there was a woman candidate, there was a candidate from the LGBT community, and I'm blessed to say that people heard my message, and in each of those demographics, more people voted for me than people who happen to come from those communities. I don't think it's about your demographic background. I think it's about your beliefs and your message.
There were a lot of black voters who said, look at this mayor, he has a biracial family, and they really felt like, especially after the Eric Garner situation, when we spoke about having conversations with your own son about how to deal with police, that's obviously something that's important to voters, even though you might not think it's the only important thing.
Well, I'm just saying there's a lot of things that voters make the decisions based on, and African American voters, like voters of every background, make decisions for what's right for themselves and their families, not just based on demographics, obviously. So the bottom line is, again, her schedule allowing, you'll see her in all states, in all communities. I would also say, a reminder that there's a very substantial African American community right here in this city. And that's important. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, man. Thanks for tuning in. You're like the one. Well, then he's yeah, coming up, brother. Hold on one second. Hey, man. It's so good to see you. Good to see you, brother.
I've actually done some work with maybe if it didn't. It literally does. There's a document process.
Text them.
Yeah, you text them.
Yeah. So I hope to see you guys together. I don't know. Hopefully this will be like Dallas cities have a lot of good energy. And
he's a little short for that line.
Well, it's not the size; it's the amount of pride and how good he is.
His job. He's very good at his job. Okay, good.
Are you ready?
But,
I'm going to Omaha.
but,
Thank you very
well,
much.
I like the appreciate
So,
guess what
New
on
York and
the
Des Moines together. I like that. I like that.
guess what on the
Come back to the office. I shared information with her about something.
yeah. Because there's also one that's in a like tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you.
no, I'm going back to New York.
So is this guy.
Are you? Yeah.
So,
you guys were going through.
Liv.
Okay.
So since we asked him and he pointed to you, what is that?
Yeah.
Ask you.
Who's paying for the trip?
Yeah. I'm bringing road to
No, like deadline is in.
We will certainly have that conversation.
Okay, so this is for you, this is
Can I ask it differently for my own purposes? Can you rule out the paying for any portion of this trip with video? That's what I'm getting. But this trip there might be past the time to write that trip. Oh, really? You do security. No, I'm really not asking about that. Everything is
Security side, yeah. And if you have any.
It's a great shirt.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. We sell them online for $20.
Yes, but that's not really. That was I meant like.
even candidates
I will do that.
Yeah, you don't get.
Yeah, because you asked